All right, everybody, this time we got ourselves a terrific director taking a terrific novel, making it into a real good movie, starring some rock and roll royalty, some French hotness, and some rocky horror sexiness. All right, everybody, this time we are looking at 1983's The Hunger. To the trailer we go.
Sarah Roberts is in jeopardy.
Hey, lady, how about it?
Stay with her. Help her, for she has begun to feel the awful horror of the hunger. John Blaylock, the hunger has given him everlasting life. Until now, pray for him. Miriam Blaylock. She feeds 1 day in 7 on the unsuspecting, and soon she will turn into something that you will never be able to forget. No matter how hard and how long you try, fear her.
What have you done to me?
Forever and ever.
And life signs terminate right here.
What am I going to do?
The timeless beauty of Catherine Deneuve. The cruel elegance of David Bowie. The open sensuality of Susan Sarandon. Combined to create a modern classic of perverse fear. Haunting, mysterious, sensual, strange, perverse, riveting. The Hunger.
Okay, this movie was directed by Tony Scott. Tony Scott is the younger brother to legendary Ridley Scott. But he had a really good career in his own right. He directed movies like Days of Thunder, True Romance, Crimson Tide, Top Gun. I mean, come on. And of course, The Hunger. Sadly, he left us a little bit too early. He was probably going through, or obviously was going through some serious turmoil in his life, and he committed suicide in 2012. And it was a sad loss to the filmmaking community because he was really, really a good director. And even without the Scott last name, had a career that, you know, put him in the upper echelons of the field. So, Tony Scott, peace out, man. But it was fun while you were here. Okay, first up here we got John Blaylock, played by legendary rock and roll star David Bowie. Shouldn't even call him a rock and roll star. He was a rock and roll icon, legend. He was an innovator. He helped change the face of rock and roll music. And as a huge David Bowie fan, it was heartbreaking that we lost him to cancer a couple years ago. And I was kind of crushed myself. But on top of being all that he was in the music world, David Bowie was also an actor. And he was in movies like, obviously, The Hunger. He was in The Man Who Fell to Earth. He was in Basquiat. He was in, he did a bit part in Zoolander. But it was amazing the career that this guy had. And he was actually good when he acted in movies. He just didn't pop up like some rock and roll guy who you were just like they're putting him in there for face value and he's doing his thing. He was actually a good actor. And a lot of people don't realize that he studied a lot of theater. And he studied mime and he studied all kinds of other stuff when he was much younger, and so to him acting wasn't a much of a change of pace. And plus he was always very theatrical anyway. His stage shows were theatrical. So acting, music, Bowie did it all. Okay, as Miriam Blaylock, we have Catherine Deneuve. Catherine Deneuve is like a legendary French film actress. Over here, again, we probably, or you probably, or most people probably, whatever, don't have a really good grasp on how big her career was overseas. Over here, I mean, she was on Nip and Tuck, and she was in a few movies that you might remember and say, oh, but over in France, she had a long, lengthy career, starting in 1957. So Catherine Deneuve, who does a phenomenal job in this motion picture playing Miriam, tip of the hat. Might not have been the biggest thing in the States, statewide, but very well respected. Very, very good actress. Okay, up playing Sarah Roberts is our own, I guess, legendary actress Susan Sarandon. Susan Sarandon's had a long career, a top-level career. She was in everything from, like, The Player to The Witches of Eastwick. She was in stuff like Thelma and Louise, Dead Man Walking, Stepmom, Bull Durham. She obviously will always be Janet from the Rocky Horror Picture Show to many of us. You know, how awesome is that? She's also in things like Pretty Baby, Atlantic City, The Tempest, which actually came out like the months before The Hunger. Actually, she looks like she walked from one movie into the other because she has the same haircut and the same, she just looks like the same girl. Very good movie, by the way, just kind of forgotten. Anyway, Susan Sarandon, great job in this movie, great job in just about everything she's ever been in. Really, really good actress. Always plays her parts, does her job right. Kudos. Hey, up last but not least, we have Dan Hedaya. Dan Hedaya's had a long, long career. Most people remember him probably for being Nick Tortelli on Cheers, and then they did a spin-off called The Tortellis where he played Nick Tortelli from Cheers. And he was on some of the old cop dramas from the 80s and 90s and all that kind of stuff. But he had a very, very long motion picture career. He's going to pop up in another movie that I'm going to be talking about at one point called Night of the Juggler. And he was in a lot of stuff, whether it was Mulholland Drive or The Usual Suspects, or he popped up in so many motion pictures. Maybe he was never like the lead actor, but he always played a significant role. And some of you might remember him from Alien 4, one of the worst fucking movies ever made. But he was in that, so he's had a long, long career. Still works to this day. Always does a great job. I don't blame him for what happened in Alien 4. That being said, good actor, solid worker, always gets the job done. All right, I'm going to give you a quick kickoff of the story, where we go, how it starts. Again, I'm never going to give you the end of it. I'm never going to give you too much of it because I want you to discover that on your own. Okay, the movie starts out with John and Miriam. They're in an underground New York nightclub. Call it what the hell you want. There's bands, there's the 80s vibe reeking all over it. It is what it is. But what they're doing is they're meeting other young couples. And after they meet another young couple, they all go back to John and Miriam's place. And then within seconds, you're like, man, what is this freaky swinger crazy stuff going on here? Because there's some, like, there's some crazy... It's getting freaky. Anyway, within seconds, John is with this other chick and Miriam is with this other guy, and you're like, okay, some stuff's about to get really weird. And then you realize very quickly that the reason they're there is that John and Miriam are vampires, and they had brought these people back to their place to feed. The very next day, John starts to show a lot of effects. Not really side effects or anything of the night before, but just effects of being a vampire. Effects he didn't think he would run into being a vampire. His hair starts falling out. He starts getting liver spots on his hands. He starts aging dramatically within a couple of days. He can't figure out really what's wrong with him, that there's something going on. He's not really sure. In the midst of all this, they see a doctor on television, Dr. Sarah Roberts, who specializes in helping people with accelerated decrepitude. Later on her for you. And she's trying to find a cure for this real disease that really does exist in real life, of people who basically genetically age before their time. Sadly, a lot of these people in the real world pass away in their teens. It's a horrible, horrible thing. But she's working on this. So both Miriam and John, in their own way, reach out to her to try to find if there's a cure for the situation that John is going through, to find out if they can stop what John is going through. He's supposed to be a vampire who lives forever. He can't figure out what's going on. John actually goes and sees Sarah at one point to try to reach out to her, but she thinks he's just some nut. She kind of blows him off, and she doesn't really want to talk to him that much until she comes back down from a meeting she was in, sees him like 8 hours later, and the man has aged like 30 years in the course of the afternoon. And then she realizes, oh my God, there's something serious going on here. Upon which she goes back to his home address to try to find him and gets further wrapped up with Miriam. I don't know if I want to give you very much more of this motion picture because there's a lot I want you to discover on your own. But the one thing I will tell you is that Miriam has gone through the ages, thousands of years, and she finds a new lover, a new mate, a new spouse, whatever you want to call it, to keep her company because she gets lonely. And she promises them eternal life. She promises they will never grow old together and they will have eternity living forever and ever together, young, healthy, virile, dream come true, with the side effect of being a vampire. What she doesn't tell them is that after a period of time, this weird side effect that she has no control of crops up. And within the course of a couple days, maybe a week, they age the rest of their lives. They age through the rest of their aging process in a short, condensed period of time, and they die. Or do they die? You see, vampires can never quite actually die. And I don't want to tell you what happens to the ones that hit this point when they're, 105 years old and they ain't creaking around anymore, because it might give away a little bit of the motion picture. But let's just say they do have eternal life, but they might not have eternal youth. Okay, everybody, what makes this story work? This motion picture is a very well-crafted, well-done art house movie. I mean, if you can get through the first 4 or 5 minutes, which is very art housey, you're kind of watching it like this is almost unsettling and weird. It's like a weird music video moved in with a drama and crazy angle shots, almost like a television commercial type thing. And get past that first 5 or 6 minutes and get the movie flowing, you will realize that it does turn into a more traditional feeling movie. Still an art house flick, still shot as an art house flick, still presented to you as an art house flick. But it is done within a way that stays consistent within itself so that it makes it enjoyable all the way through. It's a well-timed, well-paced, well-acted, well-directed thriller that is kind of in the horror genre. Very good, very worth a watch. There are a few problems here and there. I'm not going to lie. There's parts where they kind of art house it a little bit too much, and you're kind of like, okay, you're laying it on a little bit thick in this scene. And there's even some parts within the story you're like, well, if they can't, then why are they doing? How are they doing this? If they were supposed to be like, you're going to hit a couple little plot holes like that. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you this motion picture is perfect. What I'm telling you is that this motion picture is kind of a forgotten gem, kind of one that's gone under the radar over the years that people like kind of criminally overlook, and is thoroughly and totally and well worth a couple hours of your time to check out. The Hunger, 1983. Give it a look. Well worth the effort. Well worth the time. Peace, people.